What nonprofits need to know about grant funding and applications. Grant funding has always been at the foundation of funding for not-for-profits, especially coming out of the era of COVID-19 and seeing many of the challenges that not-for-profits had to face and overcome to just continue to be, to keep the ship going, right? Many not-for-profits, because of COVID-19, actually had to discontinue services because of a lack of programs and projects and funding. And then even some of the funding sources, the in-person funding sources that not-for-profits use as their bread and butter, had to go away for at least a year or two. And some people are just now getting back to a sense of normalcy, right? So I know that grant dollars are very precious to a not-for-profit. But I want to communicate to you also that not only are grant dollars precious for a not-for-profit, but it's also precious for the community in general, because the community is better because of not-for-profits. So a little bit about who we are, the Community Foundation of Northeast Alabama. If this is your first time being introduced to us, I want to share with you some of the things that we do as an organization. We are a place where we make and assist you with your philanthropic dreams coming true. We focus on three key areas as an organization: effective donor philanthropy, impactful grant making, collaborative community partnerships. We manage over 220 charitable funds, and each year we receive 1 to 2 million in gifts from thousands of donors, which include the following entities: corporate partners, individuals, families, not-for-profit organizations, cities, the state of Alabama, and the federal government. We distribute more than 1.5 million in grants and scholarships and charitable expenses every year. And so this is the impact that we have throughout Northeast Alabama. Now, I want you to have a view of the impact that you have, because sometimes in your not-for-profit world, you can feel like a silo. You can feel like, okay, we're over here on the island and we're not sipping martinis or pina coladas. We're over here on the island and we're struggling by ourselves, right? Nobody understands what we're going through. You don't feel like you are a part of a bigger picture. And sometimes it's even hard for you to perceive the type of impact that you are having, right? But I brought a few statistics just to share with you so that you can realize that the work that you're doing is very, very important to the community that you serve. Or if you are a multi-county organization, the communities that you serve. There are two main beneficial roles of a not-for-profit in philanthropy. Okay, one, a not-for-profit has the opportunity, which is different than other entities, to actually present ideas of change. If you think about it, many of the areas that not-for-profits focus on are ideas of change that's not being addressed in the community, right? It may not be addressed on a state level, and it may not be being addressed even on a federal level, but on a local level, a not-for-profit has an opportunity to rally around an idea of change that produces change. So when you look at your organization, there is in your mission statement, in your value statement, in your strategic plan, you're going to find some statement that shows you the ideas of change that you are implementing in the community. The other area is a not-for-profit is able to produce programs of impact. And these are programs that may not necessarily be state-funded or statewide. They may not be federally funded, nationwide, but they are programs that will impact your community, right? So those Just those two alone lets you know that the work that you're doing is very important, right? It's very important. Here's some statistical data for you just to consider as you think about the work that you're doing. According to the National Center for Charitable Statistics, more than 1.5 million nonprofit or not-for-profit organizations are registered in the United States. This number includes public charities, private foundations, and other types of nonprofit organizations, including chambers of commerce, fraternal organizations, and civic leagues. Here in Alabama, listen to this statistic, over 18,000 not-for-profit organizations are registered in Alabama. That's a big amount. Listen to this. The financial benefit of not-for-profits in the economy, not-for-profits contributed $1.4 trillion to the nation's economy during the first quarter of 2022 and employs over 82,000 people, which is 5% of Alabama's workforce. Think about that. That's a lot of people, right? It generates over $13.5 billion in annual revenues, holds assets of $40 billion, and Alabama foundations annually give over $229.4 million. Alabamians give over $3 billion to charity each year, and they represent 4.87% of household incomes. I could hear your mind ticking right now saying, I'd like some of those millions to show up in my bank account over there at our organization, right? But it shows you that collectively, the not-for-profit sector is not a small sector, okay? You are not a part of a small sector. You're not a part of a small group. And you can feel that way. You can feel like you're in a silo, but you are a part of a big group that is very, very impactful in the community. Okay, so I'm going to talk about some things that will help you to select a grant. How would you know what is an appropriate grant for you? Then I'm going to talk about, actually what are some keys to writing your grant. Then I'm going to tell you some of the funding that we provide. So if we've not been on your radar in the past, I'm introducing you to the funding that we have for the 9 counties that we serve in Etowah County, okay? So when you are selecting a grant, there's a myth that there's a grant available for everything every time you need it, right? How many of you, before you got in the not-for-profit world, you heard about grants, and wherever there was a shortfall, somebody just raised their hand and said, well, let's just write a grant. Yes. Right. And it's spoken about with a much more casual way than it actually is until you actually get in the world of writing grants. Then you realize that there's nothing casual about writing grants at all, and there's nothing easy about writing grants at all. You have to put the effort in order to get the type of outcome that you want to see from writing a grant, right? So I'm going to deal with a few areas that's very important for you to select a grant for the type of project that you want, okay? The first thing you have to do as an organization is you have to identify your need. Not necessarily the need of the organization that's up the street from you, the organization around you. You have to identify what's your need and the purpose for why you're writing the grant. Now, your need needs to be connected to a larger need, because you're not just writing a grant to receive the funds, to put the funds in the bank. You're writing a grant to be able to demonstrate a project or a program so that the community can be impacted by the grant that you receive, right? And so you have to tie what you consider to be a realistic need, right? Your need versus what's the community's need. One of the challenges that people have when they write grants is they start off talking about the community's need, but before the grant application is done, they end up talking about their own need as an organization. So they shift narratives within the grant application, right? It starts off, that's a good grant, let's go after that grant, and they start writing. And then somewhere around the middle of the grant, they say, you know what, I need a computer too. I think I'll throw that in there. You know what, that door in the back needs to be fixed. I think I'll throw that in there too. You know what, we need our parking lot painted, I'll throw that in there too. We need some more water coolers. I'll throw that in there too. We need this, we need that, we need the other thing. And before you know it, you have a grant that has about 50 different needs. And then whoever's reviewing that grant has to actually decipher what is the grant actually asking us for, right? So you have to be very clear on your need and realize that one grant cannot solve all of your needs. Okay, one grant cannot solve all of your needs. So if you're an organization and you have needs, you need to prioritize your needs, prioritize what you really need, prioritize what you want to go for in that grant, and then move forward. There are several grantees over the years. I've been at the Community Foundation for 6 years as the Director of Grants and Partnerships. Over the years, we've seen grants or people write grants to us. Our grant round is $250,000. That's our largest pool. $250,000 we give away twice a year. But I've had people that wanted to submit grants of over $1 million, right? Of over $1 million. And in their mind, without having the conversation with me, in their mind, you have a grant, I have a need, I'm going to write a grant. So even though we have a grant, you have a need, you have to identify, can this organization, is this the right place to meet this need, right? So even if we gave them the entire pool of $250,000, that still would not meet their need, right? They would still have over $500,000 that they have to find from somewhere else. So just because we have a source, they have a need, are we the right people to meet that need? They probably would need to write a state grant or a federally funded grant somewhere else, and they would be more successful. So identify, clarify, and sync your need, okay? All right, and then identify the appropriate funder for what you need. That kind of dovetails what I just said. And then when you identify that this is the funder that you want for your particular project, the first thing you want to do is read the guidelines, because it's very, very, very easy to just take off, start writing a grant, and you have not read the guidelines. And the strength of you being successful with that grant is in the fine print of the guidelines, right? You want to know, number one, does your project qualify to be funded from this organization? Number two, is it a restricted grant that only funds certain categories, certain items, certain things before you start writing the grant? You would hate to put all your time and effort and energy into writing a grant and do your research only to find out that the guidelines do not match the opportunity for you to submit that grant. So you want to read the guidelines first, and that's how you identify, okay, this fits with what we need. This fits with what we need. We're offering 5 grants this fall, and out of the 5 grants that we're offering, each grant has a guideline. If you go to our website, each grant, we have a specific guideline for each grant, and that can be found on our website. I gave you my card, and you would be able to pull up our website to get that information. Okay, so you want to read the guidelines. The next thing you want to do is set realistic expectations. Set realistic expectations. If you have a program and a project that is counting 100% on a particular organization giving you a grant, and I may add, it's a competitive grant. Now, if some grants are just renewable grants where you complete what they ask you to complete, and they've already guaranteed that the next 2 years or 3 years or 4 years are guaranteed, then those are the grants that you hire for positions on. Those are grants that you have some sustainability on. Those are grants that you can build long-term projects with because they've already committed to a multi-year commitment. But if you're going after a grant that, number one, is a competitive grant, number two, you have no plan of sustainability, but you are expecting it to be around a long time, you may be disappointed. You may be disappointed. So what you want to do is set realistic expectations based on the places that you are applying for a grant. Now with us, we have grants that we give that are 1-year grants. And that means that you have 1 year to receive the funds, to demonstrate the project. After that, you can apply with us again. But the same score that you got in 2020 may not be the same score you're going to get in 2021 or 2022 or 2023, because you're going to have brand new reviewers that's going to be reviewing your application every year. You're going to have new people that are applying every year. So every time you step on the field with a grant at the Community Foundation, you have to do the best job that you can, because you will be competing against everybody else that wants grant dollars. We wish we could say yes to everyone. We wish we can just say that's a great project. Yes, that's a great project. Yes, but unfortunately, for the last 6 years that I've been at the Community Foundation, the need is far surpassing the amount of funds that we can give. The requests are far surpassing. Sometimes the requests are over $1 million. Sometimes the requests are over $750,000, and we are giving away or granting away $250,000. So that lets you know how competitive the grant rounds are. But have realistic expectations. Set your program up in such a way that there are funds that's going to come from competitive grants, and then there may be funds that come from multi-year funding grants. As a matter of fact, this is the first year in 6 years we're doing a multi-funding grant. And it's a pretty small grant, but we expect it to have a great impact. But this is the first year that it is a 3-year renewable grant. This is the first time we've stepped into that arena. We're doing it on a small scale. But set realistic expectations. And listen, as I'm presenting, if you have questions, go ahead and raise your hand, and I will answer those questions. Everybody straight online, do you see any feedback online? Okay, we're good. Okay, so you can let them know online. If you have a question, you can put it in the chat box, and I will field those questions at the end of the presentation. Okay, selecting a grant and project. You want to have a level of program development for your grant that you're going to write, meaning you want to have thought through your grant before you submit it. So if you're reading your grant and you have a question, the reviewer will have a question. If you're reading the grant and it's something you don't understand, they won't understand. So here's what you want. You want to do the heavy lifting. You want to provide the clarity. You want to provide the explanation. You want to do the research. You want to provide the information that would present a grant that answers the questions, that is clear, that is concise, that gives the reviewer an opportunity to say, number one, I know who this is. Number two, I know what they want. Number three, they have clearly identified the need. Okay? So you want to take the time to develop your program. Develop it in your mind, develop it with your team, develop it and rally it around the needs that you have. One of the things we try to encourage folks to do is to look at what you are writing a grant for and make sure that it's not a duplication of services. Are you writing for something just because it goes along with what you need and maybe you can partner with somebody to get that need met? I can't tell you how many not-for-profit organizations have grants and they say, but we can't get anybody to come. We can't get anybody to participate. We can't get anybody to benefit from these dollars that we receive. We just received a grant, but we only have, we can take care of 50 people, but only 10 people are showing up. Where are all the people? Well, the question is all the way back to the beginning, when you saw this great need, how did you identify the need? How did you come up with the 50 people in the first place? Right? Where'd that need come from? Because the funder saw your request, the funder saw your need, your statement of need, and the funder responded, go and meet that need. And after you get the funds, now it seems like it's hard to find the people that you said needed it, right? And part of the reason for that is we start off thinking collaboratively, but when we receive our funds, we go back into a silo, right? We say, okay, I've talked to this agency and that agency and that agency, and it seems like everybody needs the same thing, right? So you write the grant, you get it funded, but then you stop working with this agency and that agency and that agency to get the program done, right? So one of the things we need to do is we need to continue in our program development. And one of the things we do in our grant process is we actually reward you for collaborations. When you work together with another not-for-profit and you can show that there is a collaboration, you get 10 bonus points off the top. Now, in our grant process, 10 bonus points is a big deal. It's a big deal. You can have a 60% on your grant, get 10 bonus points from us, and you jumped up to a 70. You can have a 70, jump up to 80. I have seen people that were coming in, and the scoring system that we use is just like school. 70 to 100, you're considered for funding. Anything below a 70 is not considered for funding. But I have seen people that their raw score was a 80%, but they had a great collaboration, and they were coming in fifth. And with the 10 bonus points, boom, they jumped up into the upper echelon. They had a 90. And they moved past people that had a great application but did not collaborate. Okay, so that's one of the ways that we try to encourage collaboration. Is this helpful for you all? Okay. The next thing is your grant request. You want to make sure that it is reasonable. Don't just slap down there a number because it's a grant. One of the challenges we've had in the past is that people have a $10,000 project or program, but they request $100,000. Right? Okay, if you have $250,000 to give, we're just going to ask for 100, right? But you have to have a justification for everything that you're asking. That's what gives you a strong application, is when you have a justification for your request. You want to tie now if your request is, now we put something in place because of that you cannot ask for more than $50,000 in one grant round, right? But we do still have some organizations that ask for $50,000. Now, it's okay if you're asking for $50,000 and you can show justification for the $50,000 that you're asking for, okay? But you want to make sure that in your grant request, the amount you're asking for can be easily justified by the amount of need that you want to address. And then program sustainability. You want to ask yourself, how sustainable will this program be? Now, with us, because we are a year-long grantor, we don't ask you to show sustainability when you write a grant for us, right? That's not a requirement. But it always strengthens your organization when you have a plan in place for sustainability. Sustainability basically says that I am looking beyond the funding that I'm receiving now, and I am putting a plan in place so that these needs can continue to be met. Okay? So sustainability starts with a plan, and then eventually it includes the funding to continue the project and the program. Any questions so far? I know I'm giving you a lot of information. Any questions so far? Okay. All right, so here are some points to consider when you are writing a grant. Here are some points to consider. Okay, you want to look at grant opportunity and the organization that you're receiving funding from. Do some work researching the organization that you're getting funding from and their process, the way that they do their grant cycling, their funding, how long it takes for funding to come to you once you are awarded a grant. All of that is very important because it helps you to plan with your finances if you are funded. Okay, so guidelines and requirements, we've gone over that. Grant purpose and process. Grant purpose and process. The purpose of the grant should match with the type of organization that you have. You know, one of the challenging things for a not-for-profit that may be challenged with funding is mission drift. How many ever heard that term before? You heard that term before? Okay. Mission drift. Well, here's what mission drift is that your organization, for those of you that haven't, mission drift is that you start off with a goal, with a purpose as an organization. But for some reason, the funding is not coming through the way that you need it to come through. So as an organization, you start to go after grant funding that has nothing to do with your organization's purpose and mission. And so before you know it, you're way in the deep water, focusing on a project or a program that has nothing to do with the purpose of your organization. So if you say that your organization is for women and children, that's you identified the need, you have did the research, you have the 501c3, you are going to make a difference in the lives of women and children. Well, the funding sources are not coming in as much as you want for women and children, but there is a funding source for men and teenagers. So the organization then shifts its focus from women and children over to men and teenagers. Well, that funding was really short-lived. That gave us funding for a year, but there's another funding for grandparents and grandchildren. So now you're shifting a little bit further now over into funding for grandparents and grandchildren. Well, that funding was short-lived, so now we are focusing on friends and family. And so now that funding has drifted up. And so when you look at your organization and somebody asks you, what do you do? What do you do? Well, if you go all the way back to your IRS letter of determination and your mission and your vision, you would have to say, we started off with women and children. but we followed the funding. We didn't follow the purpose, right? So it's another thing if an organization makes a decision that they're going to change their mission, their vision collectively. But if you do that just because you're going after funding, you will be changing the identity of your organization every few years, right? So you have to have a clear mind, a clear purpose that this is why we're doing it, this is who we're going to help, and this is the purpose for which we do what we do, okay? And I know that it's tough in the not-for-profit world. Before I was on the funding side, I was on the grant applicant side, right? So I worked as the person writing the grant, actually writing grants to the organization that I now am the one giving the grants, right? So I know the challenge that you could feel. I know the pressure that you can sometimes feel, but it takes a little bit more research and really just a little bit of thoughtfulness and collaboration to try to stay on your mission, and find the funding sources that actually supports your mission so that in 10 years, when you have a volunteer that come in, they know, okay, this is the organization that deals with women and children, right? Or the umbrella that they have categorized the areas that they go, grant funding that they go after because it meets their mission. Okay, your style and your formatting. One of the things that grant writers have to focus on is your style and your formatting. And this is just the grammatical portion of your grant. Just think about this. You're writing, somebody else is reading. But here's the thing you really have to think about is you're writing from the perspective of the person that knows all the answers. They're reading from the perspective of the person that's learning for the first time who you are and what you do. So if you write in from a perspective of they already know who you are, they already know this program, they already know what we do, then you will, in your application, not intentionally, but you will come across in your application like they already know you, right? So what you want to do is you want to write your application like if this application falls on the desk of somebody that never heard about us before, that they will clearly have an idea who we are, what we do, and what we're asking for, okay? And a good thing that I suggest is after you've written your grant, have a coworker read it, have somebody read it, have somebody at the house read it, have somebody just go through it, okay? The next one is, do you know the big picture? The big picture. What is the big picture for your grant request? Okay, do you know the big picture? Okay, if you were to get this grant, what's the big picture? Do you see the big picture? And can you communicate the big picture, right? You have to be able to communicate the big picture so that whoever reads your grant can read it and say, I see what they're saying. I see what they're saying, okay? And then I talked about the grant budget. You want to make sure that it's justifiable. And then grant expectations, I've went over that as well, okay? Everybody fine? Do you have any questions thus far? Any questions thus far? Okay, so here's the part of the presentation where I tell you exactly how much funding is available at the Community Foundation of Northeast Alabama. In the spring, we have 2 grant opportunities. In the spring of each year, we have 2 grant opportunities. The first one is the Stringfellow Health Fund Grant, which is a $250,000 grant pool. And that is shared through 9 counties with all applicants. Okay, $250,000. And the guidelines for the Stringfellow Health Fund is actually on our website. So I gave you my card again. You can go to our website, click on the grants tab, and look at resources, and then you can see the guidelines for the Stringfellow Health Fund. And then we also have the Summit Grant. This is a brand new grant we just had, and we actually have the chamber directors assisting with reviewing this grant for the first time. And Christy was one of our reviewers. Will was one of our reviewers. Thank y'all for doing that for us. And the total funding for the Summit Grant is $30,000. $30,000. Now, this is different from the other grants that we have because we specifically focus on internal development, capacity building internally as an organization. And we focus on two key areas that all not-for-profits can benefit from. One is technology, right? To upgrade your technology. And that's dealing with cybersecurity, that's dealing with other type of hardware and software, donor-sensitive information, how to store your donor-sensitive information, and the list goes on. And then also leadership development. One of the hardest things for a not-for-profit to do is to find money for the senior leader and the board to receive training. Right? The senior leader and the board to receive training. And that's one of the greatest ways to impact a not-for-profit is to provide training for the senior leader and the board. Right? So we decided to focus on that area, those two areas with not-for-profits. Okay? And then in the fall, which we are right smack dab in the middle of it right now, we have 5 grant opportunities. One is the Farley Moody Galbraith Endowment Fund, which we are offering $13,000. That's a pretty small grant, but it can benefit an organization. The second is the Harlan Jones Charitable Fund, which is $32,000. We're offering this grant round, and these are in no particular order. And then the Longleaf Fund. Longleaf Fund is a interesting fund because it is unrestricted. Okay, it's unrestricted. And then the S. David Boozer Charitable Fund, which is $14,000. And then our largest fund that we grant from is the Stringfellow Health Fund, which is $250,000. We offer that in the fall and in the spring. And there is a $50,000 request limit, a $50,000 request limit per application, per organization. Okay? And the fall grants information is on our website as well. Okay? We will move on. Okay, so who and where do we serve? What is our service area? We service these 9 counties: DeKalb, Cherokee, Etowah, St. Clair, Calhoun, Cleburne, Talladega, Clay, and Randolph. Those are the counties that we serve. So anybody from those counties can apply for a grant with us. Anybody. Now, the other thing is if a person or organization doesn't physically have an office space in one of those counties, but the demonstration of their project or program is in one of these counties. If it's not identified, we have a few funds, a few opportunities that you have to be in Calhoun or you have to be in our 9 counties. Like the Summit Grant, you can't be outside and get a grant on the inside. But for the most part, if you are outside one of our 9 counties, but your project and program that you're demonstrating is within, then you can also write a grant to us and apply for funding. So what we do to help with organizations get better at grant writing, we do a pre-application workshop and I teach that every year, every fall and every spring. So literally, if you say, I've never written a grant at the Community Foundation, we help you, right? We help you. We help you. We tell you what you need to do. We have a workshop. It's virtual. You log in, you log online. I do the presentation. You ask the questions that you need, and then we help you with what you need to know. And then, not only that, when you start your grant application, I teach another workshop. So I literally teach 3 workshops. Well, no, if you put it all together, probably closer to 6 workshops a year. And those workshops are centered around the time that the grants are being written, right? And you have an opportunity as a grantee to log on to hear that training right before we actually receive the grants. Now, I would say this, and I say this at the training all the time, the grant reviewers hear the same training. So it's like an open book test. The grant reviewers are being trained on the same information that you, the grantee, is going to receive. So do you think it's beneficial to log into that training? We have a good response, but we're still not at 100% yet. And I'm looking forward to the day that we can see 100% of people log in. Some people take it for granted. Some people say, well, I've written a grant with them before. I don't need the training. But if you've not gotten full funding every single time, that means that there's room for growth, right? But that's sometimes how we approach grants, right? We approach grants. So we provide this training, and these are the areas, the geographic areas that we cover. Our philosophy as grant makers is this: you are providing the work or the boots on the ground. We're providing the funding. So we don't want to just be seen as a funder. We want to be seen as a partner, right? We want to be seen as a partner. So we're not just an organization that's out there in a silo that just sends out money several times a year, and we're not, thinking about the impact of the community. No, we're a community foundation. So we want to see the impact of the community continue to grow for the good, for the better. But you're the people on the front lines that's making that happen. So when you get a grant from us, we're saying, okay, we're partnering with you. We can't do the part that you can do, and we want to help you do the part that we want to see done, right? Because there's some grant applications that come our way, and I'm like, wow, I didn't even know this was an issue in St. Clair County. Or wow, I didn't even realize in Randolph County this is something that's going on. Or wow, man, somebody in Etowah County is addressing this. Wow, that's great. I didn't even realize. I live in Calhoun County myself, right? Even right there in our own county, a grant will come across our desk. I'll say, wow, I've heard of something similar to this happening, but I didn't realize it had this much of an impact on people in Calhoun County. So you get to let us know what the county actually needs through the grants that you provide us. Okay? So what does impact look like? Because we want to partner with you so that we can provide an impact in the community. Here's where the challenge happens many times. The challenge happens between a balance of head and heart, or heart and head. Sometimes as an organization, there's a balance, there's a tug of war between the heart and the head. Meaning that as a not-for-profit organization, you're in this field because you have a lot of heart. You got tons of heart, right? Nobody's getting rich working in the not-for-profit sector, right? This is different from working at Wall Street. This is, being a hedge funder. This is totally different. Nothing's wrong with all of those things, but I'm saying this is where you've chosen to do your life's work for this season of your life, right? And so that means that you have the heart for it. But the challenge is that the challenges come not just for the heart, but the head. Meaning there are some things that logistically and hard decisions that you have to meet that may not feel good, but it's right. That makes sense? It may not feel good when you make that tough decision, but it's right. And most people in not-for-profit, we thrive on feeling good, having an organization that can provide a program and a project to help people feel better about their lives, feel better about their circumstances, feel better about their situations, receive resources that they didn't have before, implement resources that don't currently exist, and that's all heart. That's all heart. But there are parts of your organization as a not-for-profit and a grant writer that you have to make a decision that impacts the head, meaning that it may not feel good, but it's right. Right? And that's where you see organizations actually go to the next level in grant writing. Because let's say you were out there chasing those dollars and trying to get funding from here and there, and your organization, your board meetings, it's tough. And as the director, you're trying to figure out, okay, where's this ship going? Where are we headed as an organization? Where are we going to land? Where are we going to dock next? Right? Because we've been following the heart. We've been doing this and doing that and this and that. But where does this ship actually need to go? That decision comes from the head as well, because the head is then able to make the hard decision to say, you know what, that's an opportunity, but it may not be our opportunity. That's a good thing for us to focus on, but that's outside of our mission. Could we pull people to do it? Yes, we probably could pull it off. But would it take away from who we really are? Right? So you make that decision not with the heart, with the head. And it wouldn't feel good, but it's the right thing to do. So really, what does impact look like in the community? Because this is what we have to do when we review grant applications. To me, if I just use the heart and our reviewers just use the heart, hey, let's just give away $1 million. Let's give away $2 million. Let's give away $3 million. While we at it, let's just give away $4 million, right? That if we just went with the heart. But we know that we have a certain amount of funding that we can provide, and we cannot give away all of the requests that come our way. So we have to use the heart and the head. Yes, I feel that this is a great program and project. They have clearly communicated it. I think they have the expertise to do it. I think they have the infrastructure to do it. But let's look at the organization that's right next door to them doing the exact same thing. Right next to them doing the exact same thing. So should we give them 10,000 and then the organization right next door to them 10,000 and the organization that's 2 blocks up the street from them another 10,000, all to do the same thing? None of them are collaborating with each other. None of them are communicating with each other. None of them are talking with each other. Should we just give $30,000, or should we find the organization that wants to collaborate with everybody and give that organization the $30,000? That's the head and the heart. That's the head and the heart. So as a grant writer, that's how you have to think. You have to think strategic. Not just based on your request, but look at your community, look at who you're going to be helping. Have we put the necessary things in place for the community to access the service that we're going to provide? Like, say, some organizations get a grant and then they take that announcement of that grant and they hide it somewhere on their website. And nobody in the community knows. So they actually have to search out. Y'all got $10,000 for that? I didn't know that. And it's hidden. It's hidden somewhere that only they know where it's at. Right? So have you decided what's our plan to let people know? Do you have somebody assigned to let people know? Email blasts are fine. Those are good. This is a technology age, right? All of that's fine. But are you letting people know, right? Everybody won't know, right, at the same time, right? But you have to try to make it as public as possible so that the people that have the need can find the resources, and you that have the resources can meet the need, so that at the end of the day, when you fill out the reports, the grant reports, you can say, we told you that we will have 50 people. Well, we had 40. And here we did all that we could do to share with people that this is what we have to offer. We didn't quite get to 50, we got to 40, and we met our budget. So when that organization comes for grant funding the next year, that's much different than somebody that said they're going to get 50 and they had 5. Right? So what a grant funder looks at is your impact. What type of impact do you have? Am I doing good on time? Okay, 10 after 12. Okay. Do y'all want me to just keep going straight? Just keep going? Just keep going, okay. Okay, so we are now at the place where I'm going to explain the part of grant writing for the Community Foundation that will give you a guaranteed 30 points. If you master this one document, you're going to get 30 points out of 100, because that's how much this one document is worth in our organization, in our grant writing. Okay? It's called the logic model. And this is what a logic model looks like. So what is a logic model? A logic model is a visual roadmap. It is used to articulate a program and to evaluate its effectiveness. If I pull your logic model, what I have just done is I have pulled your total application on one page. This is what a logic model does. A logic model brings all of what you've told me together in one page, so that in 5 years, when you become a multi-millionaire and you move and you buy an island somewhere in the Bahamas, right? And somebody else has to take your position. Well, here's what they'll do. They can pull your logic model to see what you had in mind when you wrote your grant. Okay? When you submit your grant to us, we can pull your logic model and you will tell us exactly what you had in mind when you wrote the grant to us. So a logic model basically has 4 categories. 4 categories. 1, inputs. What are inputs? Inputs are the resources that you will need. Okay? And this document actually helps you with your grant writing, because it helps you identify what you literally need in order to complete a grant application. Okay? So 1, your inputs. Your inputs are what resources do you need? The next, it's your activities. What will you do with these resources? And these are all action verbs. Okay, what will you do with these resources? And the third one is outputs. Outputs is how many, how much, things that can be quantified. Things that can be quantified. Number of meetings, number of sessions, amount of money, percentages. That's your outputs, okay? And then outcomes, your outcomes is what impact will be made because of your grant requests. Now that you have the $5,000, from the Community Foundation, what impact will happen in Etowah County because you have received the $5,000 from us? Or the 10,000. I saw someone over there say, keep going up, keep going up. 15,000. Okay. Here's an example of a logic model. And by the way, we have these examples on our website. What you will need, your activities, what you will do, outputs, quantifiable portions of your application, and then outcomes, the impact of your application. And then here is an after logic model. So the before logic model, we talk about what you anticipate needing, how much you anticipate using, the areas that you anticipate having a quantifiable result, and then what you anticipate your impact being. And then your after logic model is actually what you did, right? Number one, the inputs that you used, the activities that you did, the outputs that you used, and then what was the outcome, which is the impact at the end. So with us, you actually have two logic models. One, the first one is your pre-logic model that is submitted in your application. And then at the end of your grant, the 1-year period, you have to submit an after logic model, and that's where you report to us the feedback that we asked for or that you told us that you would do. Okay? All right, we are at the place of questions. I have an activity I want to do with you, a hands-on activity. With your time, and we are right at 1 p.m. Did you all enjoy it? Yes. Awesome. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.